Well, would you look at that? We finally made the jump to video. It took me nearly a decade of fiddling with the idea, passing it around like a hot potato before I actually mustered the nerve to put my face out there. That's the narrative I tell myself in the dark as I stare at the ceiling fan. But the reality is more mundane. I'm just lazy, insecure, and a little shy. So, welcome to the video incarnation of the Manuel Fontes Show. So, what will this new visual version be about? Will it mirror the audio show where I react to news clips or surface stories that mainstream outlets ignore? No, none of that. That's not what this is. On the podcast, I'd often go off on these random tangents, bouts of incoherent ranting, and commentary on other things. It was a habit I developed as an old podcast I did years ago called The Complaint Department or Complaints and Grievances, back when I used to babble in my car on the drive home from work. Why not resurrect that energy on camera? Why not? And here we are. The cameras are rolling. What should we cover in episode 1? I keep circling back to something that's been bubbling up ever since the Charlie Kirk tragedy, the so called podcast war, the black pilling. I've been lampooning this on the audio show for weeks now. It's one of those manufactured battles nobody outside a small bubble can actually care about. Most people don't know the players and wouldn't be invested even if they did. What we're watching are highly produced, sometimes obviously rehearsed WWE style promos, a kind of nostalgia trip for adults who'd rather relive being a 5-year-old on the couch than handling real life responsibilities like paying a mortgage and shit. If you're unfamiliar with the usual cast of characters and their political slants, here's a short sample list: Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Mark Levin, Dan Bongino, Dave Smith, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Graham Allen, Patrick Bet David, Tim Dillon, the Hodge twins, Steven Crowder. That list barely scratches the surface. It's a mile long and populated with even more personalities who seem like they belong in Arkham Asylum. One somewhat peripheral name is Jeremy Boring, the former co-CEO of the Daily Wire. He made a comment echoing something Dan Bongino said about Candace Owens being the number one podcast in the world. Recently, though, Boring has suggested that her numbers might be inflated by bots, which raises the question: was he telling the truth before, or is he telling the truth now? Megyn Kelly has also weighed in, claiming Ben Shapiro pays for views, and Candace Owens has tried to corroborate that by insisting that everybody knows about it. But most of the podcasters in this conversation skew right politically. If that wasn't already obvious, while the left is busy attacking politicians, the right is busy cannibalizing itself. The infighting has just started, and they are very hungry. This is classic capitalism at work. Everyone wants to be number one, to dominate the market, crush the competition. The irony is that they're turning into the very thing they once criticized. And that brings us back to buying views, buying bots, and the accusations of Megyn Kelly, Jeremy Boring, and others. I suspect most of these podcasters think everyone else is gaming the system, but here's the truth. All of them are doing it. All of them. They buy views and manipulate metrics to tilt the playing field in their favor. If you want to emulate them, here's how the sausage gets made. Consider your crash course in podcast shenanigans, the fast track to a fake PhD in podcast bullshit. First, you got to set a budget. Expect to spend somewhere in the ballpark of $5,000 to $10,000 a month to start getting real traction. Then get a podcast analytics tracker. What you see up here is tools that monitor chart position, track reviews, provide competitive analytics. generally limited to the major podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify. The examples here are Podkite, Pod Status, Podchaser, Podtrack. These free tiers do the basics, pay up a little bit, and they unlock more intrusive and detailed features like YouTube tracking, SEO analytics, advanced KPI tracking, geospecific breakdowns if you care which countries are listening. They'll even give demographics like age, gender, relationship status, and so on, provided you feed your RSS into their systems. Once you link these tools, the world opened up and you can tailor your content to chase the numbers. Some of these services claim to provide IAB 2.0 certified download figures that are bot free. But what exactly counts as a download? That's the gray area nobody explains clearly. Different people sell different metrics as the be all end all. Joe Rogan will tell you downloads are everything. Steven Crowder will insist the click through rate or CTR or unique listener metrics are the key. Both are right just for different reasons. Of course, total downloads are the currency you use when you're pitching for sponsorships. But how many seconds of listening qualifies as a download under IAB 2.0? Prepare to laugh your ass off. It's 60 seconds. 60 measly seconds is enough for a download to count. That little loophole explains Rogan's extended 3-hour monologue of bullshit. He only needs you to stick around for 1 minute to make the threshold. The rest of the show can be whatever he wants it to be. Tangents, repetitive jokes, bullshit, whatever, just to make it through the rest. Crowder, meanwhile, cares about CTR because he needs to prove to his platform, like Rumble, that his audience is actively engaging. If he can show advertisers that listeners are clicking the links in the episode descriptions or follows the call to action, that engagement metric becomes his bargaining chip with the platform. So when he peppers his show notes with links and urges people to click them, he's not making a hobbyist suggestion. He's generating measurable evidence to present to the company he wants his audience to believe isn't paying him. In short, there's a whole ecosystem of metrics, tools, and hacks that shape what counts as success in podcasting. People will shout about authenticity, but behind the scenes, it's a numbers game. And most of the big names aren't above using whatever tricks moves those numbers in their favor. If you're curious about how any podcast is performing, how many followers or downloads it has, a good place to start is Raphonic.com. Type in the show name and you'll see the basic audience numbers. They also sell a deeper dive for about $200 if you want a detailed breakdown. Don't forget tools like Social Blade and Podscribe for additional metrics. Once you've picked the analytics tool that matches your budget, it's time to promote your show. If you've put out around 5 episodes or so and aren't getting downloads or reviews, you'll want to advertise, pitch yourself, and look for places to get your name in front of people. A lot of podcasters and even some prominent hosts, according to industry chatter, use paid tactics to boost visibility. Most podcast platforms offer built-in monetization and promotional options, from short dynamic ad insertion to short promo swaps with other shows. For example, for about $500, some platforms like Podcast Addict, Podbean, Buzzsprout, Audio Go, Overcast, Spotify, etc., will run a 30-day campaign that puts your podcast name and a link on the main page of your category that you're in, like kind of like a digital billboard. That can occasionally yield an extra subscriber or two. Other hosts change how they're monetized as their download numbers rise. Networks such as Red Circle, Audio Boom, and Sprecher will insert ads into your episodes once you've hit certain download thresholds. Those arrangements are usually handled within your hosting plan. What I've described so far isn't meant as a personal attack. It's an attempt to explain the practices that operate behind the scenes. There's a lot of talk in the podcasting world about people buying downloads or views and it's worth understanding these services that make those numbers possible of over a rolling 30-day window, of course. Two services commonly mentioned are Mopods and Podroll. Mopods reportedly offers packages such as 1,000 downloads for 1,100 bucks, which you can apply to a single episode or distribute across multiple episodes. Podroll operates more like a marketplace. Members trade what is called feed drops, which are full episode placements in other podcast feeds. They claim a conversion rate of around 6%, so results can be hit or miss. The prices for participation often start about 500 bucks and go to God knows how many. Providers typically describe their traffic as legitimate, but you should evaluate those claims yourself. If you're looking beyond above board services, such such as click farm style marketplaces. These are large, loosely organized operations, often based in parts of South Asia and South America, that sell fake followers, likes, apps installs of fake web traffic through resellers and social channels. Likewise, social media marketing panels will sell fake followers, views, and engagement to inflate apparent audience size. Something streamers and influencers have encountered or been accused of using. Destiny and Hassan Piker know all about this. I've only scratched the surface of the marketing tactics used in podcasting. Some established creators don't rely on these methods as much anymore, either because they've grown beyond them or brought an existing fan base from earlier careers. Still, when you hear podcasters accusing one another of buying or farming listeners, keep in mind that paid promotions and traffic buying are common in various forms, so take these public claims with skepticism and a grain of salt.